Shalom Aleichem. This is the third of our series on who are the chosen people of God, or Yahweh. In our previous episode of Torah Tidbits, we saw that there is indeed still a chosen people of God. And since it is God that does the choosing, none may boast, nor is it pride to say you're part of the chosen people, as long as you don't say it proudly. The chosen are the descendants of Abraham. Later, the nation of Israel. And we saw that they had a civil war and split into two, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Or for short, the Jews. Judah, which also included the tribes of Benjamin and part of Levi, or Levi. The Jews are the only visible remnant of Israel today. The other tribes were scattered and lost until this day, though we now have some idea where they are. The question is, who are the nation of Israel today? Is it only the church? Though taken out of the Holy Land for a time, we saw that the true Jews, who were the only known remnant of Israel, were given authority by the king of Persia to rebuild Jerusalem and establish their Torah nation. Ezra 7:11 through 26. Let's just quote a small amount of it. You can look the rest up. I make a decree that all they of the people of Yisrael, which are minded of their own free will to go up to Yerushalayim, go with thee. Whatsoever is commanded by the God of heaven, let it be diligently done. Diligently done. Now some constantly bring up that while in Babylon, the Jews adapted Babylonian customs, the Babylonian alphabet, etc., 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 and therefore are not the chosen people today. Rubbish. The very reason God turned the heart of the king was to send his chosen people back to Jerusalem to serve and thus glorify the true God of heaven in spirit and in truth. Ezra 7:20 and 23. And whatsoever more shall be needful for the house of thy God, which thou shalt have occasion to bestow, bestow it out of the king's treasure. Whatsoever is commanded by the God of heaven, let it diligently be done for the house of God. So the big question that we're all chomping at the bit is, are the people and the modern state of Israel, which are in that land today, the true people of Israel of the Bible? The answer may surprise many. More importantly, what have the Jews been chosen for? We will answer that today on this episode of Torah Tidbits. Welcome to Torah Tidbits, where we seek the heart of God as preserved in the eternal principles of his Torah. Israel and the Jews. Some will bristle up at the very name Jew. We have been maligned, misunderstood, hated, and envied throughout the ages. So many other groups have accused us of killing Christ and sought to say that their group alone, have replaced us as God's chosen people. Let us go down through time from the beginning of the church's founding. The early church fathers, 2nd, 3rd, 4th century. This is a quote. As therefore Christ is the Israel and the Jacob, even so we, who have been quarried out from the bowels of Christ, are the true Israelitic race. Chapter 135, the Apostolic Fathers, Justin Martyr, dialogue with Trypho. These are the people who have shaped Christianity, Catholic, Protestant, even Messianic, and that is what they taught and still teach. Okay, down through medieval times. The murderers of God, the lawless nation of the Jews. Tone 4, the Holy Friday liturgy of the Eastern Orthodox and the Byzantine Rite Catholic Church. So this saying, the murderers of God, the lawless nation of the Jews, is recited by the priest and repeated by all of the congregants every year on Holy Friday, or what we would call Good Friday, in every Orthodox and Byzantine church. And it's ingrained on down through the Protestant Reformation. Here's a quote from Martin Luther in the times of the Reformation. This is the 1543 treatise he wrote, Von den Juden und ihren Lügen, on the Jews and their lies. Luther's Works, American edition, volume 47, The Christian in Society, 4. Edited by Franklin Sherman, Fortress Press, Philadelphia, 1971 publication, pages 268 through 272. This has been research. I didn't just take some quotes I found online or in some meme or some video. Here's a quote from Luther. First, to set fire to their synagogues or schools, and to bury and cover with dirt whatever will not burn. Second, I advise that their houses also be razed and destroyed. Third, I advise that all their prayer books and Talmudic writings be taken from them. Fourth, I advise that their rabbis be forbidden to teach henceforth on pain of loss of life and limb. Now get this, that was the founder of the Reformed Protestant Church who taught this. And it's ingrained in the churches and the believers today, even among those who claim to follow the Torah. Okay, into the 1800s now. The black Hebrew Israelites, quote, Jews are interlopers and frauds. Interlopers. We don't belong in the Holy Land. They do. They're the only true Israelites, they're saying. Into the 1900s, the Christian identity movement. And this is a movement that has interested me throughout the years. They believe in the lost 10 tribes and have tried to trace them. Of course, they believe that the lost tribes are only the white Celtic and kindred Anglo-Saxon peoples, Germanic tribes. But anyway, they teach that all of the Ashkenazic Jews are Turks, not real Israelites, descended from the Khazars that converted to Judaism. And this is the myth that they teach. Understand, the Jews are divided into two groups generally, ethnically and by their dialect of speaking. There's the Sephardim, the Sephardic, which means Spanish, and these are the ones that are in and around Western Europe and the Mediterranean, into the Arab lands, maybe the darker-skinned Jews. And then there are the Ashkenazic Jews, which you would find in Russia and Eastern Europe. But all Jews, and they claim the Ashkenazim are not true Jews. But a 2006 study by Doron Behar of the Rambam Medical Center in Haifa, Israel, all the Ashkenazim are descended from 4 Middle Eastern women, Semitic women, not from Turkey, not from Europe, not Khuzarim. Also, the Christian identity, some of them teach, and the Branhamites teach, and the Unification Church teaches an even worse doctrine about the Jews, that Satan and Eve cohabitated to produce Cain, and Cain is the serpent's seed, and therefore all of the descendants of Cain are the seed of the serpent, including the Jews, and that the Jews are unredeemable. But of course, the Christian identity teaches that they are the chosen. The Branhamites teach that they are the only chosen. And Unification Church, likewise. Okay, on down to the 2000s. We have an interesting phenomenon, the Hebrew Roots movement. And that's divided into many different sects and beliefs and understandings. But ironically, some of them also recently claimed to replace the Jews. Here's one particular curious group called the Creator's Calendar. And they teach statutes, prescribe practices that set the covenant people apart from the Gentiles or infidels, often without an immediately obvious moral rationale. So it doesn't matter if you're a moral person or that you're interpreting commandments to be for our good and to be a light to those of the world. You just have to follow this particular calculation of the Sabbath day and you're in. Okay, quote, these include lunar appointed times based upon his full moon as the authentic new moon and the start of lunar years and months. The day begins at sunrise and ends at sunset. Carrie L. French. So what they're saying, if everyone else that doesn't keep the Sabbath 1 month on Tuesday, the next month on Wednesday, the next month on Thursday, if they are not part of the covenant people, they're Gentiles and infidels, they're saying that only their movement is the true Jew, the true Israel, the chosen people. And they've even scrapped the scriptural interpretation of starting the day at sundown. It's just another replacement theology. They say we are the new Israel and the Jews are not the true Israel. These people see the need to reinvent the wheel and scrap everything the Jews believe, from the calendar of months on down the line. But they, just like all the rest after the apostles died, say they are the new Israel and the Jews are out. Anyone who doesn't keep the Sabbath like they do are not in the covenant, they're Gentiles and infidels. Okay, so the scripture tells us that Israel, from Abraham, are the chosen people, and of the visible ones known today, for now, not for forever, the others will be restored and the lost tribes, but only the Jews are visible. It doesn't say the Yahwists, the Yehuists, the lunar Sabbatarians. It doesn't say the flat earthers or Christians. It doesn't say the Baptists, Mennonites, Catholics, the Christian Orthodox, but it says Jews. Now the Bible appears to identify the Jews in a negative way. Let's look at John 5:16. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. Traditionally understood, this refers to the religious leaders, not all the Jews of that day, nor all the Jews on down through history, nor all the Jews of the present time. You could also take this as meaning God's people in general, those that God gave his word to, and trusted them to preserve it and follow it, to show others the way. So today, you want to replace the Jews with yourself? You could replace this Jews, where Jesus talked against the Jews, with Baptists, Pentecostals, Catholic, Orthodox, Mennonite, Hebrew roots. Okay, it was not mentioned because they were Jews. It was mentioned to say those that are trying to follow God, that were given to follow God. How do we know that? Am I just making this up? Am I just excusing the evil of the Jews? I wish to excuse no evil. We've all come short of the glory of God. But this is how we know. John 20, verse 19. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut and the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews. Now the original believers were all Jews. Were they afraid of themselves? No, they're talking about the leaders. And they're only talking about some of the leaders. And we'll see in a brief moment. Came Jesus and stood in their midst and saith unto them, Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you. So all the first believers were Jewish, and some of them were even the leaders. Some of them were priests. Acts 6:7, a great company of the priests were obedient to the faith. Some of them were Pharisees, the original believers. Acts 15:5, Pharisees which believed. Some of them were rulers of the Sanhedrin and judges. John 12:42, many of the chief rulers believed. Many of them were scribes, even lawyers. Mark 12:28 through 34. Yeshua said, "You are not far from the kingdom." Now, many quote John 8 and other places where Jesus spoke negatively about the Jews. How many know the multitude of places where Jews are spoken of positively in the New Testament? We are out of time, and we will continue in the next episode of Torah Tidbits to identify who specifically is the biblical nation of Israel today. Is God done with the Jews? And is he done with the physical location of the modern state of Israel? What did God say would happen to all this in the future? Will the saints of God soon be magically sucked up in a rapture and the earth be burned up? One day it will, we know from prophecy, but there's some things that have to happen first. Important events in a particular order. And we're going to look at those prophecies. And the prophecies of God are true, and God is true. And if these things don't come to pass, then we aren't able to trust in that God or in the scriptures. But we are. What are the chosen people chosen for? That's even more important. We'll look at that next time. That'll be the last of this series. Is the true Israel today only the church? Finally, what should be our obligation? And this maybe is the most important. What should be our obligation, if any, to the modern state of Israel today? Important because there is a raging division and debate about this. Well, thank you for joining us on Torah Tidbits. You can catch this on the replay on Facebook. You can catch it on our YouTube channel anytime, 24/7. Be sure to stay tuned. We're going to try to finish this up on the Sabbath this coming Saturday, God willing, and the creek don't rise. Shalom and blessings to all.
And cut.